He mocked the waitress for being poor, then saw the photo she kept in her pocket. The words might have been a headline, but the night made them true. A man in a midnight suit, watch gleaming like a small moon, laughing too loudly as if the sound alone could keep him from hearing himself, and a woman with a coffee pot and quiet eyes, standing so still you might mistake dignity for silence. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because some stories restore faith in what truly matters, and this one begins where pride forgets its mask. The restaurant sat at the lip of the river where the city's reflected lights trembled, a place that smelled of frying onions and second chances. Harbour Diner had a bell that chimed on the door, cracked leather booths, and a jukebox the owner swore still worked if you kicked it right. Outside, a chauffeur idled beside a midnight sedan, worth more than the diner's annual rent. Inside, Nicholas Arlen tapped his black card against a chipped Formica table and spoke as if every word carried a price tag. "Do you take pity tips?" he said, glancing at the jar by the register. "Or is that a premium service?" The men with him, lawyers, partners, one surgically groomed venture capitalist who laughed like breaking ice, found him charming. They always did. Nicholas owned glass towers that folded the skyline into themselves. He collected companies the way children collected stones, heavy in his pockets, proof of something. He'd been trained by a world where softness meant you were borrowed from a story someone else would finish. In that world, he was the one who wrote endings. She set the coffee down without a ripple. "We take warmth," the waitress said, "if you have it." Her name was Lena Morales. She had a pencil tucked behind her ear and a calm that moved like water around stones. She worked the breakfast rush for truckers, the noon lull for grandmothers who asked about recipes, the midnight hour for ghosts in expensive suits. She moved through the aisle with a small limp from a teenage injury no one had noticed at the time. Life had kept moving, so she did too. Rosa, the owner, said Lena could make burnt toast taste like Sunday, and she did somehow with her laugh and the way she remembered how you took your tea. Nicholas looked up, drawn by the quiet authority of her voice. He saw the neat bun at the nape of her neck, a threadbare cardigan turned noble by the way she wore it, and eyes that were neither pleading nor hard. He saw a waitress and decided she was a lesson. "Warmth," he repeated, rolling the word between his teeth. "Is that what they call it when people choose small lives?" "Sometimes they call it kindness," she said. Victor Chen leaned in, the sharp point of Nicholas's oldest friend and newest CFO. "Ignore it, Nicky. We're celebrating." He tilted a glass. "To the Harbour District acquisition. Bulldozers in 60 days. All this," he waved at the diner's humble walls, "becomes a luxury promenade. Billionaire love story," crooned the venture capitalist, mocking the city's romance with wealth. "Rich man, poor woman? Not this time. Rich man, rich skyline." He laughed at his own joke, and Nicholas allowed it because he usually allowed everything. Lena heard bulldozers and held still. Rosa had whispered about a sale, contracts whispered like storms in another county. But hearing it now from the people who could make it true was like watching someone draw a circle around your home while you still slept inside. She did not show it. She wrote down an order. She moved her hand, and a folded photo peeked from her pocket, the corner soft with years. Nicholas's gaze snagged there, not yet curious, only cataloguing as he did. He was a ledger of a man, assets, liabilities, exits. He noticed how poor people carried paper memories instead of cloud backups. He noticed how the cardigan had been darned at the cuff. He noticed the way Lena adjusted the tip jar so it faced the door, not his table, as if to deny him the satisfaction of owning even that small gratitude. "My fiancé says I need to work on my empathy," Nicholas said to the table idly. Camille Roth had diamonds like subtitles that translated her smile. "She thinks I should understand the human cost of business." He mimed quotes with his fingers. "My therapist says I should stop dating my mother's ghost." More laughter. "Because honesty sounded like performance when you could afford it." "Maybe they're both right," Lena said. He turned to her fully then. "And maybe some people think they've earned an opinion because they chose to never risk anything worth losing." Lena didn't step back. "You sound like someone who forgot what losing feels like." He was the kind of man who could leave the earth without changing expression, but the line prickled under his skin. He'd forgotten nothing. He'd simply placed memory in a vault and trained himself to walk past without looking. He toyed with the spoon. "Bring the check," he said, "and keep," he held the pause like a leash, "keep the change. Consider it a donation. Love beyond money, right?" He let the irony sit. She didn't flinch. "Sir, your coffee's on the house." "It's not much." but we don't charge for refills of what we have." Victor snorted. "Saint Lena, you should monetize that warmth." "She already has," Nicholas said. He meant the tip jar. He meant the way kindness could be a product if you were willing to sell yourself by the hour. He meant to be cruel enough to wound and forget. The bell chimed. A neighbor ushered in a little boy with a knitted cap too big for his head, cheeks red from the cold. He ran to the counter and showed Lena a crumpled drawing of a boat on a bright blue sea. "For the wall," he said. She crouched, eyes level, as if the paper were a deed to a kingdom. She taped it up beside Polaroids of birthdays and retirees, and a dog that everyone agreed could smile. The boy's mother pressed a few coins into the jar. "Thank you for the soup last week," she murmured. "You saved us a grocery trip." Lena nodded once, no fanfare, no sermon. She returned to Nicholas's table and set the check face down. "Here you are." His fingers brushed the folded photo in her pocket by accident. When she reached for the receipt, the small square shifted under his knuckles like a heartbeat. He caught the edge without thinking, the way you catch a detail when you're trained to harvest them. She moved to pull away, instinct the way you protect something that keeps you upright on bad days, but he had already slid 2 fingers to the corner and lifted. "Don't," she said softly, not pleading, protective. He should have handed it back. He did not. He unfolded it with the same careful arrogance he used to open term sheets. The paper crackled with a sound that could have been a memory loosening. The photo was creased in 4 places, worn to a fog at the center, but not enough to hide the scene. A street at dusk, a teenage boy on a curb with his knuckles torn open, a woman kneeling to offer him a paper-wrapped sandwich, the glow of a diner window behind them with letters that looked, even in the blur, like something. Nicholas felt the world tilt, a fraction. The boy's face, jawline not yet finished, eyes too old for the rest of him, was a mirror tilted through time. You don't expect the past to meet you in a place that smells like grilled cheese. You don't expect your own mouth to be grim, with the kind of stubbornness you learned later to glamorize as drive. You don't expect a photo you've never seen to remember you. Lena reached to take it, but his thumb had found the smudged date penciled on the back. He knew the year. Everyone in his industry knew the year Nicholas Arlen became news. The boy who ran from a house that wouldn't hold him. The boy who slept under bridges. The boy who discovered that hunger could be converted into other currencies if you disciplined it. He had spent a decade ensuring no one ever saw those pages again. It was power and it was shame. It was heartbreak and redemption in a single ledger line he never wanted to audit. "How do you have this?" he said, not as an accusation but as a man who forgot how to breathe for 1 second. His partners had fallen silent without being told. They watched numbers happening to him in real time. Lena's eyes were steady. "A woman I loved used to carry it," she said. She said the boy in the picture made her believe the city still had a memory left. "Who?" he asked. "The waitress who worked this counter before me," Lena said, glancing at the photographs on the wall. "She kept it in her pocket. She kept so many people alive with the stories she told about them." A pause. "She died last winter." Rosa had entered from the kitchen, wiping her hands. She saw the photo in Nicholas's grip and closed her eyes for a moment, as if a draft had just swept through that carried a voice. "My mother," she said. That was her. She said the boy wouldn't take the sandwich unless she promised to take the first bite so he'd know it wasn't charity. Nicholas swallowed. He remembered a bite of bread that tasted like home the way a mirage looks like water. He remembered a woman with flour on her sleeve and a joke about paper cranes she folded for luck. He remembered leaving the curb with a napkin scrawled with an address where a hot meal waited if he ever wanted it. He never went. Pride had been his forbidden love. Pride had been the thing that felt like safety when nothing else did. Victor broke the spell, the way money does. "Nikki, the contract," he said softly, like a friend who thinks the answer lies in finishing what they started. "We sign in 2 days. It's just real estate." Lena looked from Victor to Nicholas. "It's never just real estate," she said. "It's people. It's second chances stapled to leases. It's the boat drawings on the wall." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Nicholas kept staring at the photo, then at the peeling letters above the window, then at the corner of Lena's cardigan, where a small mend had made something broken hold. He felt the old ache unvanish. He was a rich man. She was a poor woman. The math here was obvious and also impossible. It was the kind of class difference romance no one would write because the spreadsheet said the ending had already been purchased. But there, in the soft light and the scent of fry oil, something he'd pawned years ago placed a hand back on his shoulder. He placed the photo down with reverence he didn't fully understand yet. "What was her name?" he asked. "The woman who kept this." Rosa's voice thinned. "Anna." Nicholas repeated it, as if the syllable might unlock a door he'd bricked over. Outside, cold air pressed its face to the glass. Inside, steam fogged the corners of the window, where the boy's boat drawing sailed toward an imagined sun. "Mr. Arlen?" Lena said, quiet. "Your driver's waiting." He looked at her then. Not a waitress, not a lesson, but a person with a map of tiny, brave choices stitched into the hem of every day. He looked at the wall of Polaroids, at the tipped jar, at the table where he had tried to buy superiority for the price of a cruel joke, and he thought with sudden clarity that the city did remember. It remembered him to his own surprise. "Keep the photo," she added, surprising him. "If it's yours—" He shook his head. "It's yours," he said, even though his voice sounded like it was learning to speak. "You kept it safe." She slid it back into her pocket with a care that made him want to apologize to everything. The bell over the door rang when a gust nudged it open and shut again. Nicholas's phone lit up with Camille's name, as if wealth could rescue him from the strange gravity of one small square of paper. He didn't answer. He rose to go, card left unused, the check untouched. His entourage puzzled at this new math that didn't total. But before he reached the door, he paused and turned, as if someone had said his name from another decade. His eyes fell, unbidden, to the outline of the photo against Lena's pocket. And for the first time in years, something like fear and hope moved in him at the same time, because the boy in the photograph had his face. Nicholas couldn't stop looking at the outline of that old photo, pressing faintly against the fabric of her pocket. It felt misplaced in her uniform, like a secret that had wandered into the wrong century. He told himself it didn't matter, yet something about it itched beneath his expensive calm. Outside, the city pulsed with neon indifference. Inside, the sound of dishes and laughter from other tables blended into a quiet rhythm that no longer amused him. Lena wiped the counter, as if erasing time itself, and Nicholas found himself wondering why a woman like her, grounded, warm, yet visibly tired, would still care enough to smile at strangers who didn't deserve it. When his driver appeared at the door, Nicholas left without another word. But halfway to the car, he turned. Through the diner's glass, he saw Lena laughing with Rosa, the owner, her expression illuminated by the pale amber of the ceiling light. There was something haunting about it, a beauty not meant to seduce, but to soften. He caught himself staring. Then he shook it off like a man brushing off a dream. In the car, Victor spoke fast, rehearsing numbers, timelines, investor calls. Nicholas nodded at all the right moments, but heard nothing. His mind was still inside the diner, trapped somewhere between the sound of her voice and the echo of his own cruelty. He thought of Camille, his fiancée, her voice sharp and practiced, the voice of someone born to the same world as him. She loved his success the way collectors love rarity, careful not to touch it for too long. Their upcoming wedding was less romance than merger. Two families, two fortunes, one controlled narrative. When he reached his penthouse, the city unfolded beneath him like a conquered map. Marble floors, panoramic glass. Silence. He poured himself a drink and stood by the window, but the reflection staring back no longer looked invincible. He imagined the diner flattened, glass towers built where warmth once lived, and for the first time he didn't like the image. On the kitchen island, his phone buzzed. Camille again. He let it ring. Then another name lit up. Mother. He hesitated, then declined the call. He wasn't ready to explain why he couldn't sleep in the house he'd built for himself. The next morning, Lena returned to the diner before sunrise. She'd barely slept. The previous night's conversation kept replaying in her mind, not because of his arrogance, but because of the flicker she'd seen in his eyes when he looked at that photograph. She knew that look. People came through those doors every day pretending to be something. The lonely, the proud, the lost. She could read them all. But that man, he was something else. Someone who'd buried the truth so deep that even he had forgotten the grave's location. When Rosa arrived, Lena asked quietly, "The man from last night, Nicholas Arlen, you knew they were the ones buying the block?" Rosa hesitated. "Rumors, yes, but I didn't want to worry you. What could we do anyway?" Lena pressed her lips together, holding back the frustration that came from powerlessness. "Maybe not much, but this place was your mother's life." Rosa's expression softened, "and she'd tell you to keep serving coffee with a smile until you figure out how to fight differently." By mid-morning, the bell above the door chimed again. To everyone's surprise, it was Nicholas, No suit today, just a dark coat, gloves, and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept either. He walked to the counter and stood there as if unsure of the protocol for remorse. "Black coffee," he said. Lena turned slowly. "Sure. On the house again?" He nodded. "If you insist." Rosa exchanged a glance with her, then disappeared into the kitchen. The silence between them filled every corner of the room. Nicholas finally spoke. "I shouldn't have said what I said yesterday." "That depends on which part," Lena said without bitterness. He took a breath. "All of it." For a long moment she studied him, not as a waitress assessing a customer, but as someone measuring truth. "Apologies are easy when you own everything," she said softly. He looked down at the mug. "You think owning things makes it easy?" "It makes it optional," she said. Nicholas's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being read like this. "I saw that photograph," he admitted. "The one you carry. Why do you keep it?" Lena hesitated. "Because it belonged to someone who taught me what compassion looks like." He waited. "She was Rosa's mother, Anna," Lena said. "Before she died, she gave me a few things. That photo was one of them. She said the boy in it once reminded her why she never gave up feeding strangers." He froze. "The boy?" She nodded. "Yes. She said he was just a teenager then, hungry and proud. He refused help until she pretended to share her own meal. Said she never saw him again." Nicholas's heart stumbled. He reached for the photo on instinct, but Lena pulled it gently from her pocket first and set it on the counter. He stared at it. The blurred edges, the faint pencil date, the memory he'd spent years burying. The boy in the picture, the torn jacket, the defiance in his eyes. It was him. The one thing he swore the world would never see again. How did she keep this?" he asked, his voice thin. "She said he needed it more than she did," Lena replied quietly. "But he never came back, so she kept it safe." For the first time in years, Nicholas felt small. Not the way the poor feel small before the rich, but the way the powerful feel when they realize someone once saved them without asking for anything. He ran a hand through his hair. "She gave me a sandwich," he whispered. "Said it wasn't charity, just company. I didn't know her name until now." Lena smiled faintly. "Anna never asked for thanks. She just wanted people to pass it forward." He looked at her then, really looked. And for a brief, fragile second, the man and the waitress stopped being symbols of two worlds. They were simply two souls holding a shared ghost between them. Nicholas straightened, swallowing hard. "Keep the photo," he said. "It doesn't belong to me anymore." "It never stopped belonging to you," Lena said gently. "You just forgot what it meant." Their eyes met. No music, no grand gestures. Only the quiet realization that life had placed them at the same counter for a reason neither yet understood. Outside, rain began to fall. Inside, Nicholas's phone buzzed again. Camille's name flashed on the screen. He didn't answer. Not this time. Instead, he reached for a pen from the counter and scribbled something on a napkin. He left it beneath the mug, dropped a few bills beside it, and walked toward the door. When Lena picked it up, she saw just one line written in his steady, elegant handwriting. "Do you believe places can be saved?" She looked up, but he was already gone, his coat vanishing into the grey morning. Rosa returned from the kitchen, noticed the napkin and frowned. "He's coming back, isn't he?" Lena traced the words with her finger. "I think he doesn't know it yet." Outside, Nicholas paused beside his car, the city reflected in rain puddles at his feet. He'd built towers out of stone, but this was something different, something softer, more dangerous. For the first time in his adult life, he didn't know what to build next. And deep down, he suspected the answer waited for him behind that diner counter. The rain didn't stop for 2 days. It painted the city in shades of regret, and Nicholas felt every drop as if the storm had settled inside him. Meetings came and went, but his focus slipped through every conversation. Numbers blurred, voices flattened, and each time someone said acquisition, he heard the echo of Lena's voice. "It's never just real estate." He told himself it was guilt, the ordinary ache of someone who'd seen his own reflection in a stranger's compassion. But guilt didn't explain why he found himself driving back to the Harbour District the following night, his car idling in the same parking space. The diner's windows glowed like small lanterns in the dark, defying the downpour. Inside, Lena was cleaning tables after closing. Rosa was counting receipts. When the doorbell rang and Nicholas stepped in, both women looked up, not surprised but wary, as if life had prepared them for people who always came back once too late. "You again," Rosa said without malice. "We're closed." Nicholas hesitated. "I'm not here to eat." "Then you must be lost," she said. but Lena's quiet voice stopped her. "It's okay," Lena murmured. "He's not lost. Just trying to remember where he's been." Rosa sighed, wiped her hands and went to the back, muttering about dishes. The door swung shut, leaving them alone in the hum of the refrigerator and the whisper of rain against glass. Nicholas took off his gloves, laid them on the counter, and looked around as if seeing the place for the first time. "I've built things my whole life," he said, "but I never built something that felt alive." Lena leaned against the counter, watching him. "That's because money can build walls, not warmth." He smiled faintly. "You have a quote ready for everything." "I've had practice," she said. "People come here with their stories. You learn to listen between the lines." He met her eyes. "And what do you hear in mine?" Lena thought for a moment before answering. "A man who's been rich long enough to forget what being saved feels like." The words landed like a soft truth. He didn't argue. Instead, he walked toward the wall of Polaroids, the one he'd mocked days ago, and traced his fingers over the photos. "She remembered everyone," he whispered. "She did," Lena said. "Even the ones who didn't think they were worth remembering." Nicholas turned. "She told stories about me." "Only one," Lena said. "About the boy who refused food until she promised to share it. She said he had fire in his eyes. Not anger, just hunger to prove something." He laughed quietly. "That fire turned into glass towers. And maybe glass can still reflect what matters," Lena replied. For a moment, silence. Then Nicholas reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folder. "I came to show you something." She frowned, drying her hands. "What is it?" "The redevelopment plan," he said, opening it. Architectural renderings, glossy and cruel, spilled across the counter. Sleek towers where the diner stood. Artificial greenery, replacing the river's honesty. "This block is supposed to be the crown jewel of the project. Investors expect demolition next month." Lena's jaw tightened. "You brought this here to remind me?" "No," he said. "To ask if I'm wrong." She stared at him. "You already know you are." He nodded, as if accepting a verdict he'd long postponed. "Then help me fix it." Lena blinked. "Help you? I can't undo the contract alone. There are penalties, boards, partners who think kindness is bad for business. But maybe there's another way." Lena crossed her arms. "Why would someone like me know more than your lawyers?" "Because someone like you knows what this place means," he said simply. "They only see land. You see life." Her defenses faltered for the first time. "You think a conversation can change men who only listen to money?" "I used to be one of them," he said. "Maybe I still am, but I can start by listening to you." Lena shook her head, half smiling. "You don't owe me that." "I owe her," he said, glancing at Anna's photo on the wall. Rosa reappeared from the kitchen just in time to hear it. "If you really mean that," she said, "come back tomorrow morning. The regulars will be here. Maybe you'll remember what this diner feeds besides hunger." Nicholas hesitated, then nodded. "I will." That night he returned home and sat at his desk, surrounded by blueprints and silence. The city outside glimmered, his empire glowing proudly, yet for the first time it felt cold, sterile. He thought of Lena's hands, steady even under cruelty. He thought of Anna's photo, of the boy he used to be. He poured a drink, but didn't touch it. Instead, he opened his laptop and pulled up the contract for the Harbor District project. His cursor hovered over the clause marked Demolition Schedule. He didn't delete it. He just stared, long enough for doubt to feel like rebellion. The next morning, the diner was alive again. Truckers, nurses, an old saxophonist who played outside for coins. Nicholas stepped inside just as sunlight broke through the clouds, earning curious stares and a few whispers. He didn't fit here, but Lena greeted him with a nod, not surprise. He took a seat by the window. Rosa poured him coffee without a word. The regulars eyed him like a foreigner trespassing in a sacred space. When Lena passed by, he said quietly, "You were right, about warmth." She smiled faintly. "I usually am." Then she noticed the rolled-up blueprints under his arm. "You brought those again?" He nodded. "This time, for everyone." Rosa crossed her arms. "You plan to show them how you'll erase their memories?" "No," he said. "I plan to ask what they'd build instead." A silence fell. Then, slowly, one by one, people gathered around his table. A mechanic suggested a community kitchen. The musician asked for a small stage. A retired teacher imagined a reading space for children. Each idea was humble, impossible, beautiful. Nicholas wrote them all down. His pen trembled only once, when Lena leaned close enough for him to smell the faint trace of soap and coffee. "You're serious," she whispered. He nodded. "I don't know what I'm doing, but it feels like the first honest thing I've done in years." When the meeting ended, Nicholas folded the papers and stood. "I can't promise miracles," he said, "but I'll try." Rosa wiped a tear she refused to call one. "If you do, maybe Anna will stop haunting this place." Nicholas smiled. "If she's haunting anyone, I think it's me." As he turned to leave, Lena caught his sleeve. "You're not the man who walked in here the first night." He met her gaze. "Then who am I?" "Someone learning what wealth really means," she said. He looked down at her hand still resting on his sleeve. Small, steady, human. Something in him ached. Before he could answer, a familiar voice echoed from the doorway, sharp, polished, and utterly out of place. "Nick?" He turned. Camille stood there, perfect as ever, her diamond earrings catching the morning light like accusation. "What are you doing in this dump?" The room froze. Lena dropped her hand. Rosa's expression hardened. And Nicholas, for the first time, felt the two halves of his world collide, the one he'd built from pride and the one that had just started teaching him how to feel. He opened his mouth, but no words came. Only the sound of Camille's heels on the diner floor and the quiet certainty that nothing would ever be the same again. Camille's presence in the diner was like a diamond dropped into a cup of black coffee, brilliant, cold, and completely out of place. She looked around the room with an expression halfway between disgust and disbelief, as if she'd stepped into a photograph that didn't belong to her story. Her perfume clashed with the smell of bacon and detergent. Nicholas rose slowly, every eye in the diner turning toward him. "Camille," he said, his voice cautious. "You didn't answer my calls," she said sharply, her stilettos clicking against the tile. "I had to track your car. And now I find you here." She gestured to the chipped counters, to Lena, to everything she couldn't comprehend. "This is what's been keeping you from the board meetings." Lena stood behind the counter, still and composed, refusing to retreat even an inch. Rosa crossed her arms, bracing herself for a scene. The regulars went silent, pretending to stir their coffee but watching every detail unfold. "Camille," Nicholas began carefully, "this isn't— Don't tell me it's not what it looks like," she snapped, "because it looks like my fiancé is playing charity in some filthy diner instead of closing a multi-million-dollar deal." Nicholas's jaw tightened. "It's not charity." "Then what is it?" she demanded. "You think pretending to care makes you a hero? You can't save everyone, Nick. You don't even know these people." Lena's voice broke the air like a steady note of truth. "Maybe he's finally trying to." Camille turned to her, eyebrows arched. "Excuse me?" Lena met her gaze, unflinching. "You don't have to understand it. Just don't stop him before he does something good." Camille laughed, short and cutting. "Something good? You mean throwing away everything he's worked for, his reputation, his legacy?" Rosa stepped forward. "Funny," she said. "From where we stand, it looks like he's finally earning one." Camille's face flushed with controlled fury. "This is absurd. Nick, let's go." He didn't move. His silence stretched, heavy and unfamiliar. He had been many things: ambitious, disciplined, ruthless, but indecisive was never one of them. Yet here, in the warmth of the diner, between the woman who represented everything he'd built and the one who reminded him what it meant to feel, he couldn't move. Finally, he said quietly, "I'm not leaving." Camille blinked. "What?" "I said I'm not leaving. You can't be serious." "I am." Her eyes narrowed. "You're jeopardizing everything. The deal, the wedding, your entire name." "Maybe it's time that name means something different," he interrupted. For a heartbeat, she looked stunned. Then her tone softened, the way people do when they sense control slipping. "Nick," she said, voice syrup smooth, "we've been through too much to let sentiment ruin us. This is temporary. You're stressed. You'll apologize, we'll fix it, and no one will even remember this as place." He turned toward Lena, then back to Camille. "You're right about one thing," he said. "I don't want anyone to forget this place." Camille stared at him, the realization dawning. "You're really doing this?" "Yes." She laughed, but it cracked. "Do you even hear yourself? You're standing in a diner, surrounded by nobodies, defending a waitress." The word waitress cut through the room like glass. Nicholas's tone turned sharp. "Her name is Lena." Camille blinked again, stunned by the defiance in his voice. "Unbelievable," she whispered. "You're humiliating yourself for—" She stopped, realizing that finishing the sentence would expose a kind of cruelty even she didn't want to name. He exhaled, long and quiet. "Go home, Camille." She stared at him as if he'd spoken in another language. "You're ending this?" "I'm ending the lie," he said simply. The silence that followed was a living thing. Camille's face went pale, her pride the only thing keeping her upright. Finally, she lifted her chin, her composure snapping back into place like a mask. "You'll regret this," she said, her voice trembling behind its elegance. "You always regret the things that make you human." Then she turned and left, her heels echoing through the diner until the bell above the door rang and the rain swallowed her entirely. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Rosa muttered, "She's wrong. The human part's the only one that lasts." Nicholas managed a faint smile. "I hope so." He sat back down, the tension draining from his shoulders. Lena poured him a new cup of coffee without a word. After a while, she said softly, "You didn't have to do that." "Yes, I did," he replied, "because if I didn't, I'd still be building towers to hide from myself." She looked at him for a long time, her eyes carrying that quiet understanding that needed no explanation. "People don't change overnight, Nicholas." "Maybe not," he said, "but sometimes one night changes everything." Outside, the rain eased into a mist. Inside, the air felt lighter, though neither dared to call it peace. Later that evening, after the last customer left, Nicholas helped Rosa carry boxes into the storage room. Lena followed, surprised. "You don't have to." "I know," he said, lifting a crate. "That's why I want to." When they finished, the three of them sat at a booth with leftover pie and cheap coffee. Rosa, always practical, broke the quiet first. "You really mean to fight this demolition?" Nicholas nodded. "I've already told my board I'm re-evaluating the project." "And they'll just let you?" she asked. He smiled. "They won't, but I'm not asking permission anymore." Rosa studied him, then grinned. "Your mother would have liked you better this way. She would have been shocked," he admitted. "She'd have baked you a pie for it anyway," Rosa said, standing. "You two lock up. I've got bills to pay and ghosts to thank." When she left, Nicholas and Lena were alone again. The silence was different now, heavier, but gentle. Lena wiped the counter one last time. "You really think you can save this place?" "I don't know," he said, "but I know I can't destroy it." She smiled, just barely. "That's a start." He studied her then, quietly. The way one studies a painting, they suddenly realize they've misunderstood for years. "You ever think," he asked, "that maybe people meet when they're meant to fix each other?" Lena leaned her elbows on the counter, tired but smiling. "Or to remind each other that they're not broken. Something passed between them. Not romance yet, not confession. Something deeper, older, like the echo of gratitude that had been waiting years to be heard." When Nicholas left that night, he paused by the door, looking back one last time. The lights were dimmed, the air still smelled like warmth, and Lena's reflection shimmered faintly in the glass. For the first time, he didn't feel like a man leaving. He felt like one finding his way back. But outside, on the other side of the street, a shadow stood watching. Victor Chen, his loyal CFO, the one who'd built his empire beside him. And in Victor's hand was a phone, the screen lit up with a single message typed but unsent. "He's turning against the board." He hesitated, thumb hovering over send, his face unreadable in the rain. Then the message vanished. He pocketed the phone and turned toward the darkness where loyalty and ambition were about to collide. The morning after Camille's departure, the city headlines screamed of another acquisition delayed, investors uneasy, and whispers that Nicholas Arlen, the man who never flinched, had suddenly grown a conscience. Victor Chen watched the news from his corner office, the skyline fractured in the reflection of his glass desk. He'd known Nicholas since they were boys chasing impossible dreams, both hungry for power but in different ways. For Victor, power meant security. For Nicholas, it had once meant revenge against the world that forgot him. Now it looked like Nicholas had gone soft, and softness was dangerous in their world. When Nicholas entered, Victor was already standing by the window, a tablet in his hand. "You skipped the investor call," he said. "I know. You cancelled 2 meetings. I know that too." Victor turned. "Then tell me you have a reason I can sell to the board, because right now they're calling me at midnight, asking if you've lost your mind." Nicholas leaned against the desk, calm but firm. "I told them we're revising the Harbor District project." "Revising?" Victor repeated. "You mean sabotaging. Do you have any idea how much money is tied up in that land?" "Yes," Nicholas said quietly. "And I also know what's tied to it besides money." Victor's jaw tightened. "You're talking about that diner again." "I'm talking about what it represents. The only thing it represents is a liability," Victor said. "This isn't about some woman or a nostalgia trip. We've built an empire on precision, Nick, on never letting emotion write the rules." Nicholas's tone was sharp now. "Maybe that's the problem." Victor's laugh was bitter. "You sound like her already. The waitress, right? Lena?" Nicholas didn't answer, but the silence was enough. Victor shook his head. "You're risking everything. the company, your reputation, for someone who serves coffee in a dying neighborhood. Nicholas stepped closer. She reminded me what we built this for. It wasn't just money, Victor. Remember when we started Arlen Holdings? We said we'd build something that outlasted us, something that mattered. Victor looked away. That was before the world taught us what mattering costs. I'm not afraid to pay it, Nicholas said. Maybe you should be. The room went still. The friendship between them, forged through decades of shared ambition, now balanced on a thin line of betrayal neither wanted to name. Victor spoke again, his voice quieter. You think they'll forgive you? The shareholders, the board, they'll eat you alive. You can't build empathy into a business plan. Maybe not, Nicholas said, but I can build humanity into one. Victor stared at him for a long time, then turned toward the door. You're making a mistake, he said. And I won't watch you burn everything we built. Nicholas's voice followed him out. Maybe it needs to burn before it can mean something. That night, the harbor diner was half empty. Rain had returned, and Lena was closing early when the door opened again. Nicholas walked in, drenched, exhausted, but strangely at peace. You look like you lost a war, Lena said gently. He smiled. Maybe I did. Did you at least win something? Perspective, he said, sitting at the counter. She poured him coffee without asking. You don't look like someone who drinks to forget. You look like someone who remembers too much. He laughed quietly. You'd be a terrible therapist, you know that? I'm a great listener, she said. For a moment, they simply sat in silence. The hum of the fridge, the sound of rain against the window, the small comfort of two people who didn't need to pretend. Nicholas finally said, I might lose everything. And, he looked at her, surprised by her calm. If you're doing the right thing, she said, you're not losing, you're just changing what everything means. He exhaled slowly, as if her words had lifted a weight. You make it sound simple. It's not simple, she said. It's just right. He studied her, the steadiness in her voice, the way her eyes didn't waver. You don't even know me, he murmured. Then maybe it's time you let someone try. The words landed softly, but stayed. He reached into his coat pocket and unfolded a document, the very contract he'd shown her days earlier. The board wants me out if I go through with this, he said. Victor's furious. Camille's gone, but I don't care anymore. Lena frowned. You care. You just don't care about the same things anymore. He smiled faintly. You should be the one running my company. I'd replace your boardroom with a community garden, she said, making him laugh for the first time in days. When the laughter faded, he looked at her hands resting on the counter. You know, he said softly, I used to think love and weakness were the same thing. And now? Now I think indifference is. Lena's expression softened, but she didn't speak. There were moments where silence said what words never could, and this was one of them. They stayed like that for a while, two silhouettes reflected in the diner's window, a rich man and a poor woman. But in that quiet hour, the difference between them no longer mattered. Eventually, Nicholas stood. Tomorrow I meet the board, he said. If they force me out, I want you to have something. He pulled from his pocket the photo, the one of young Nicholas and Anna. She kept it safe all these years. Now it's your turn. Lena hesitated. Are you sure? He nodded. It's where it belongs. She took it carefully, fingers brushing his. Then promise me something. What? That if they take everything, you won't disappear again. The world already lost you once. His throat tightened. I'll try not to. When he left that night, the rain had stopped. The air was sharp, clean. The kind of night where a man could believe in second chances. But as his car turned the corner, another car followed. Victor sat behind the wheel, watching him drive away. He'd spent the evening at the boardroom, listening to shareholders whisper words like replacement, vote, breach of duty. He could stop it. He could call Nicholas, tell him the truth, that the board was already moving against him. But the memory of Nicholas's defiance, the stubborn light in his eyes kept him silent. Still, somewhere deep inside him, loyalty stirred, old, wounded, but alive. He looked at his phone, thumb hovering over Nicholas's name. Then he dropped it into the passenger seat and drove into the night, toward a decision that would change everything. Back at the diner, Lena locked the door and stood by the window, holding the old photograph against her chest. The boy in the picture looked stubborn, wild and scared, the same expression Nicholas carried when he talked about redemption. She whispered to the glass, Don't let them break you again. Outside, the streetlights flickered. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled. And in the heart of the city, a boardroom filled with men in suits prepared to end Nicholas Arlen's reign by morning. The boardroom was a theater of silence and power. Floor-to-ceiling glass walls framed the city like a trophy, and 12 men and women in dark suits sat around a marble table worth more than most homes. Nicholas stood at its head, not as the untouchable CEO they once revered, but as a man who had chosen conviction over convenience. Victor sat 2 seats down, his face unreadable. The others whispered, shuffled papers, avoided his eyes. The air was thick with judgment, disguised as professionalism. Finally, the chairman cleared his throat. "Mr. Arlen, this emergency meeting was called because of your unilateral decision to suspend the Harbor District project. Billions are at stake, and our investors are concerned." Nicholas nodded calmly. They should be concerned, but not about the delay, about what that project represents. A ripple of irritation moved across the table. One woman, Forbes, the legal director, leaned forward. "We've heard this rhetoric before. You've become sentimental, Nicholas. That's not what this company was built on." He met her gaze. "You're right. It was built on hunger, on chasing numbers so hard we forgot they were attached to lives." Another board member scoffed. "Oh, you can't save the world by turning real estate into a moral crusade." "No," Nicholas said evenly, "but I can stop us from destroying the parts of it that still have meaning." The chairman sighed. "This isn't about meaning. It's about stability. You've made personal choices that have jeopardized our stock value, alienated investors, and—" Nicholas interrupted quietly. "I made human choices. And if that costs me everything, so be it." The room froze. No one breathed. Even Victor, who had expected defiance, hadn't expected surrender. Forbes spoke again, sharper now. "Are you admitting you've lost confidence in your own leadership?" "No," he said. "I've just stopped confusing leadership with dominance." The chairman exchanged glances with the others. "Then you leave us no choice." He took a folded document from his briefcase and slid it across the table. "The board has voted to remove you as CEO of Arlen Holdings, effective immediately." Victor closed his eyes briefly, guilt flickering like lightning. Nicholas didn't flinch. He took the document, scanned it once, then placed it neatly on the table. "I expected this. You'll receive a severance package and retain minority shares," the chairman said. "We'll announce your resignation publicly tomorrow. It will be amicable." Nicholas gave a small, almost imperceptible smile. "You can dress up betrayal however you like. It's still betrayal." For a heartbeat, the only sound was the rain against the glass. Then Nicholas turned toward the door. "Good luck," he said, voice steady. "You'll need it more than I will." He left without another word. Victor followed him out, catching up in the hallway. "Nick, wait." Nicholas stopped, not turning. "You knew." Victor hesitated. "They would have done it with or without me. But you didn't stop them." "I tried." "No," Nicholas said quietly. "You justified them. That's worse." Victor's composure cracked. "I was protecting the company." Nicholas turned finally, eyes burning with something that wasn't anger, but disappointment. "You were protecting yourself. The company doesn't need protection, Victor. It needs a soul." Victor's voice broke. "And where does that leave me?" Nicholas looked at him for a long moment. "Exactly where I was before someone fed me a sandwich and reminded me I was still human." Then he walked away. Outside, the rain had stopped. The air was heavy, electric, as if the city itself was waiting. Nicholas took off his tie and let it fall into a puddle. He didn't pick it up. By the time he reached the diner, the evening crowd had thinned. Lena saw him through the window and knew immediately something had happened. She didn't ask. She just poured coffee and set it down in front of him. He sat there, silent, staring at the steam curling up from the cup. "They took it from you," she said softly. He nodded. "Everything." She tilted her head. "Then what are you still doing here?" He looked up, surprised. "If you lost what wasn't real," she continued, "maybe it means what's real is still waiting." He laughed under his breath. "You make hope sound rational." "It usually isn't," she said, "but it's the only thing that rebuilds anything worth keeping." For the first time since leaving the boardroom, he smiled. Small, genuine, the kind that doesn't ask for witnesses. "You have a strange way of giving sermons, you know that?" "I learned from the best," she said, glancing toward the old photo of Anna on the wall. They sat in silence again, the kind that heals instead of hurts. After a while, Nicholas reached into his coat and placed a pen on the counter. "This was my first investment pen," he said. "Every deal I ever signed started with it." Lena frowned. "Why are you giving it to me?" "Because every deal I made with it made me poorer in ways I couldn't see," he said. "You'll put it to better use." She touched it gently, as if afraid it might burn her. "I don't know what to say." "Say, you'll help me rebuild something honest," he said quietly. She looked at him, the conviction in his eye, the humility that hadn't been there before. "What do you want to build?" He smiled faintly. A foundation, one that helps people like Anna keep their doors open. Not charity, not pity, just opportunity. Lena nodded slowly, the idea settling into her heart. Then you're not rebuilding your empire, you're rebuilding yourself. Maybe they're the same thing, he said. Outside, thunder rolled again, distant but persistent. Inside, the diner's light reflected off the glass, making their silhouettes look like two sides of the same story, finally beginning to meet. When Nicholas left, he paused by the wall of Polaroids. He touched Anna's picture gently and whispered, "I didn't forget this time." As he stepped out, Rosa entered, shaking her umbrella. She noticed Lena holding the pen. "He left that?" Lena nodded. Rosa smiled knowingly. "Then he's not done yet." That night, Nicholas didn't go home. He drove aimlessly until the skyline disappeared and the suburbs began. He stopped at a small motel, the kind of place he'd once stayed in when he had nothing, and fell asleep without turning on the lights. In the morning, sunlight leaked through the blinds. He sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, unread messages from Victor flashing across the screen. He didn't open them. Instead, he scrolled to Lena's contact, the one he'd saved but never used, and typed, "If I built something new, would you help me run it?" He stared at the blinking cursor, then hit send. Back at the diner, Lena read the message, heart pounding in quiet disbelief. She typed back, "Only if we build it for the right reasons." Nicholas smiled, the kind of smile that felt like beginning again. But neither of them knew that Victor, sleepless and cornered, had been summoned back to the boardroom that same morning, this time by people who wanted to destroy more than Nicholas's legacy. And in their hands, they held the contract for the Harbor District project, ready to erase the diner for good. Victor had spent the night staring at the contract. It sat on his desk like a wound that refused to close. The board's final decision had come by email at dawn. The Harbor District redevelopment would proceed on schedule. Nicholas's objections nullified by his removal. He hadn't signed yet. His name was the last one missing. Without it, the project couldn't move forward. The chairman had called 3 times already. "Sign it, Victor," he'd said. "Be reasonable. The city expects progress, not sentiment." But the word progress felt poisoned now. It echoed the same hollow language Nicholas had once used, before he rediscovered what it meant to have a conscience. Victor poured himself another coffee he didn't want, and stared at the skyline. Somewhere out there, Nicholas was probably starting over, and Victor should have been glad. But instead, all he felt was the weight of something he couldn't name, a loyalty that refused to die quietly. By mid-morning, he gave in and drove to the diner. He told himself it was to check on the property, maybe get closure. But when he walked through the door and saw Lena wiping tables, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up, he realized it wasn't closure he wanted. It was forgiveness. She looked up and froze. "You're the friend," she said after a moment. He nodded, the one who didn't stop it. Rosa emerged from the kitchen, instantly bristling. "We don't serve apologies here. Coffee's free, though." Victor tried a smile, failed, and took a seat. "I didn't come to fight." "Then you came to the wrong place," Rosa said. Lena placed a cup in front of him, her tone calm. "Why are you here, Mr. Chen?" He sighed. "Because I think I'm about to make another mistake, and I needed to remember what the last one cost." Rosa crossed her arms. "And what's the new mistake?" He reached into his jacket and unfolded the contract. "They're moving forward with demolition. They want me to sign. If I don't, they'll sue me for breach of fiduciary duty." Lena stared at the papers. "So they're still destroying it." "Unless I find a reason strong enough to stop them," Victor said. "And Nicholas doesn't know?" she asked. He shook his head. "I didn't have the courage to tell him." Rosa leaned forward. "Then maybe it's time you find it." Victor hesitated. "He won't listen to me anymore." "Maybe he doesn't need your words," Lena said quietly. "Maybe he needs your actions." Her calmness unnerved him more than any accusation could have. He looked around the diner. The Polaroids, the old counter, the faint hum of a place that had somehow survived every storm except this one. He could almost hear Anna's laughter somewhere behind the walls. He folded the papers again and stood. "Tell him I came," he said. "Tell him he was right." But as he turned to leave, Nicholas walked in. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. The entire diner seemed to hold its breath. "Victor," Nicholas said finally, voice controlled but cool. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "I could say the same," Victor replied. "You've traded your corner office for pancakes." "Best trade I ever made," Nicholas said. Victor managed a small, sad smile. "I believe you." Rosa glanced between them, sensing a storm. "I'll be in the back," she said, disappearing before the thunder struck. Nicholas sat across from Victor. "What are you holding?" Victor laid the contract on the table. "The final version. The board's going through with demolition. They want me to sign today." Lena set down a pot of coffee, her hands trembling slightly. Nicholas stared at the document, jaw tightening. "They didn't waste time." "They never do," Victor said. "And if I refuse, they'll destroy me legally." "Then don't refuse," Nicholas said flatly. "Just don't sign." Victor frowned. "What's the difference?" "Silence," Nicholas said. "Sometimes silence buys time." Victor looked at him, torn between admiration and fear. "You think time will change their minds?" "No," Nicholas said, "but maybe it'll change ours." Lena studied both men, realizing she was watching something rare. Two people who had built their lives on power, now learning humility in real time. Nicholas turned to her. "You once said kindness isn't weakness. Maybe now's our chance to prove it." Victor rubbed his temples. "And what? Hold a protest? You think a few coffee drinkers can fight an empire?" "No," Nicholas said, "but I think a story can." Lena's eyes narrowed. "A story?" Nicholas nodded. "My mother used to say the truth doesn't need power, just witnesses. We show them what this place means. We show them who Anna saved, who found home here. We make it impossible for them to erase it quietly." Victor shook his head. "You're talking about going public. You'll be shredded in the press." "Then so be it," Nicholas said. "They can destroy my name, but they won't destroy hers." Lena met his eyes, understanding the weight of that promise. "You're serious?" "Completely." Victor leaned back, defeated. "You'll drag me down with you." Nicholas smiled faintly. "Only if you deserve it." For a moment, the air between them softened. Two friends on opposite sides of a burning bridge, both realizing they might still cross it together. Finally, Victor said, "If we do this, we'll need evidence. Proof of what this diner has meant." Lena stood. "You want proof? Come with me." She led them to the back wall. Dozens of Polaroids pinned in uneven lines fluttered slightly from the air vent's breeze. She began to take them down one by one. "Every face here has a story," she said. "People who couldn't afford dinner, workers who ate on credit, veterans who sat alone until someone noticed. Rosa's mother fed them all. She never wrote their names, but she remembered everyone." Nicholas watched her hands tremble as she spoke. "We'll give them names now," he said quietly. Victor looked at him. "You really think people care about some old photos?" "They care about the truth," Nicholas said, "especially when it reminds them who they used to be." That night, the three of them worked until dawn, scanning photos, writing notes, gathering testimonials from customers who still remembered Anna. Rosa stayed open past midnight, brewing coffee for anyone who came to share a memory. The diner became a shrine of stories, heartbreak and redemption, laughter and loss, everything the boardroom had never understood. As the sun rose, Nicholas looked at Lena, exhausted but alive. "If this doesn't work," he said, "at least they'll know we tried." She smiled softly. "If it doesn't work, we'll start again." Victor stood by the window, the first light touching his face. "You're both insane," he said quietly, "but maybe that's exactly what this world needs." Outside, morning broke over the city. Calm for now, but beneath it the storm was ready. Because by noon, the story of Nicholas Arlen, the billionaire who defied his own empire to save a diner, would spread farther than any of them imagined. By noon, the world knew. The story broke first on a small local blog. Billionaire fights to save diner that once fed him. It spread like a spark in dry grass. Within hours, every outlet from the Times to online gossip pages carried it, each with its own version of truth and spectacle. Some called it redemption, others called it madness. But everyone was talking about Nicholas Arlen. The Harbour Diner was suddenly a pilgrimage site. Journalists crowded the parking lot. Strangers arrived with flowers, candles, or just curiosity. Rosa grumbled about the chaos, but cried when an old trucker showed up with a photo of Anna, saying, "She saved me once too." Inside, Lena tried to keep the world from swallowing the place. "We're still serving coffee, not headlines," she told a reporter gently. "This isn't about a scandal, it's about gratitude." Nicholas stood near the counter, phone vibrating non-stop. Former colleagues, furious investors, board members threatening lawsuits. He didn't answer a single call. He only watched as people entered the diner not to consume, but to remember. Victor arrived late that afternoon, his expression unreadable. "They're losing their minds downtown," he said quietly. "The board's panicking. Half the investors pulled out this morning." Nicholas didn't flinch. "Good. Maybe they'll remember what fear feels like. Victor exhaled. They're blaming me too, you know. They think I leaked the story. Nicholas turned to him. Did you? Victor smiled faintly. Would it matter if I did? Nicholas studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Thank you. For the first time in weeks, the two men laughed, not from irony but from relief. The war they had started together was now far beyond either of them. Later that evening, as the reporters began to thin out, Lena found Nicholas sitting in the last booth, alone with a notebook. You planning your next empire? She teased softly. He looked up, smiling. Something smaller, something real. She sat across from him. You realize they'll come for you. The board, the investors, that they'll sue, maybe ruin you. I know, he said, but I'd rather lose everything than live another day without knowing who I am. She watched him for a moment, then said quietly, That's what love looks like. He met her eyes, something unguarded flickering there. You think this is love? She shrugged, her voice calm. If it isn't, it's close enough to hurt the same way. They sat in silence, the weight of it both terrifying and peaceful. Outside, the city glowed under the setting sun, indifferent to the quiet revolution happening in one small diner. That night, the news reached Camille. She was at a charity gala when a reporter asked, How does it feel to know your ex-fiancé gave up billions to save a diner? The cameras caught the flicker in her expression, not anger, not humiliation, but something closer to envy. Because she had everything except the one thing he had found, meaning. At dawn, Nicholas received an email from the chairman. Notice of legal action. You are hereby held personally responsible for the financial losses resulting from unauthorized disclosure and breach of contract. He read it twice, then closed his laptop. There was no fear in his chest, only a strange calm, as if he had finally reached the edge of something and found peace there. When he arrived at the diner that morning, Lena noticed the weariness in his face. Bad news? He nodded. They're suing. Then we'll fight. He smiled faintly. I'm not sure I can win this one. Winning isn't the same as being right, she said. Rosa entered with a stack of letters. These came for you, she said, dropping them on the counter. Mostly people who saw the story. Nicholas opened one. Inside was a photo of an elderly man standing beside a soup kitchen. The note read, Your story reminded me of the woman who once fed me. I opened this place in her honor. Thank you for remembering her name. Letter after letter carried the same message. Gratitude, empathy, hope. People he'd never met, thanking him for something he hadn't realized he'd started. By the fifth letter, Nicholas couldn't read anymore. His vision blurred. Lena reached across the counter, her hand covering his. She'd be proud of you, she said. He swallowed. I didn't do this for pride. I know, she said. That's why it matters. The doorbell chimed. Victor walked in again, carrying a briefcase. They're calling it a class difference romance now, he said dryly. You're the headline of every billionaire love story podcast. Nicholas chuckled. So I'm entertainment now? Victor shrugged. Better that than a villain. He hesitated, then opened the briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. This is the contract, the one they wanted me to sign. I didn't. Nicholas blinked. You're resigning? Victor nodded. I already did. I figured if I'm going to lose everything, I might as well lose it for something worth keeping. Nicholas clasped his shoulder, voice low. You didn't lose, Victor. You just remembered. Victor gave a crooked smile. You sound like her. When he left, Lena said quietly, You've changed him too. No, Nicholas said. He just needed permission to remember his heart. As evening fell, the diner filled again, not with reporters this time, but with people who came simply to sit, to talk, to belong. The board could threaten, the city could forget, but something unshakable had taken root. Nicholas watched Lena move among the tables, calm, graceful, radiant in her humility, and realized he hadn't just found redemption. He'd found something far rarer, someone who saw him not as who he was, but who he could still become. He approached her quietly. Do you ever regret staying here? Every time I think of leaving, she said softly. Someone walks in needing what this place gives. How could I go? He smiled. Then maybe I should stay too. She looked at him, really looked, as if testing the truth in his eyes. You don't belong to the city anymore, Nicholas. You belong to what you're building now. He nodded. Then I'll build it here. The hum of conversation around them softened. For a moment, it felt as if the world outside had paused, as if the diner itself had become a heartbeat big enough to hold them both. But in the darkness beyond those windows, the board was already preparing one final move, a legal order that would come before sunrise, forcing the closure of the harbor diner once and for all. And neither Nicholas nor Lena knew that by morning they would have to choose not just what to save, but who. The envelope came before sunrise. Thick, official, cruel. Rosa found it first, taped to the door of the diner, sealed with the cold authority of law. She tore it open with trembling hands, eyes scanning the words she didn't fully understand, but could feel. Notice of immediate eviction. Demolition scheduled within 48 hours. She dropped it on the counter like it was poison. "They're not even pretending anymore," she whispered. When Lena arrived minutes later, the sun still hiding behind the skyline, Rosa handed her the letter. Lena read it once, jaw tightening. "They're accelerating it," she said. "They're afraid of the attention." Nicholas entered just then, coffee in hand, unaware. When he saw their faces, he stopped. "What is it?" Lena held out the letter. He took it, read in silence, and for the first time since this fight began, something broke in his composure. "They can't do this," he said, though the tremor in his voice betrayed doubt. "They already did," Rosa said softly. Nicholas paced, running a hand through his hair. "I'll call my lawyer." "Your lawyer works for them now," Lena reminded him gently. He stopped, the truth landing hard. For a moment, he looked like the boy in that old photograph again, the one with defiance and fear stitched into the same expression. Lena stepped closer. "You don't have to fix this alone. I started this," he said. "It's mine to end." Rosa's eyes flashed. "Don't talk like that. This place isn't just yours anymore. It's ours, hers, everyone's who ever sat here and felt seen." Nicholas looked up at the photo wall. Anna's face smiled back at him, half faded but eternal. He drew a deep breath. "Then we fight." Within hours, word spread again. Reporters returned. Locals formed a line outside. Victor came running, holding his phone. "Nick, the injunction's signed. You can't stop it through the courts, but maybe through optics." Nicholas frowned. "Meaning?" Victor lowered his voice. "Meaning if the public sees them tear this place down, they lose more than money. They lose the city's respect. You need to be here when it happens, visibly, defiantly. Make them afraid of their own reputation." Rosa slammed a hand on the counter. "You're suggesting he stand in front of bulldozers?" Victor looked at her. "If that's what it takes." The hours blurred. Cameras arrived. Protesters carried cardboard signs. "Love beyond money. Save the harbor. Aina fed us all." The street that once barely noticed the diner was now a wall of faces and hope. Nicholas stood at the center, coat soaked from drizzle. Lena beside him, calm but fierce. He turned to her. "You don't have to stay." She met his eyes. "I didn't stay for the coffee, remember?" He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that hides heartbreak. Then the sound. Engines growling, metal approaching. The demolition trucks turned the corner, escorted by workers and police. Rosa gripped Lena's hand. "Anna used to say courage isn't loud, it's steady," she whispered. Lena nodded, her other hand finding Nicholas's. He didn't pull away. The first bulldozer halted just a few feet from the entrance. A man in a hard hat stepped forward with a clipboard. "We have orders to clear the site," he said. "You need to step aside." Nicholas's voice was calm. "No." The man shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, we have authorization." "Then show me the name on it," Nicholas said. The man hesitated, pulling out papers. Nicholas glanced at the signature, Victor Chen. He froze. "You signed this?" Victor stepped forward, voice low. "I had to. It was that, or lose my family's livelihood. But I leaked the time. You knew when they'd come because of me." Nicholas's expression softened. "Then you didn't betray me, Victor. You gave me a chance." The foreman looked at them, uneasy. "We're just following orders." Lena stepped closer. So was everyone who forgot to say no. The man swallowed hard. "You can't stop this." Nicholas's tone dropped to a whisper that somehow carried, "Maybe not, but you'll have to go through me first." He stepped forward, planting himself in front of the diner doors. Cameras zoomed in, recording every second. The crowd hushed. The foreman hesitated. "You'll be arrested." Nicholas nodded. "Then at least the city will remember who destroyed what fed it." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Some began chanting softly, then louder. "Save the diner, save the diner." The police officer in charge looked uncertain. "Mr. Arlen, please don't make this harder." Nicholas turned to Lena. "If anything happens, promise me you'll keep it open somewhere else." Her eyes glistened. "Don't talk like that." "I mean it," he said. "This place isn't walls. It's people. Promise me." She swallowed hard, then nodded. "I promise." He took her hand and kissed it, not out of romance, but reverence. Then whatever happens next, it was worth it. The bulldozer roared again, gears grinding, but no one moved. Reporters yelled, cameras flashed, and the chant rose until it felt like thunder. Victor whispered to the officer, words lost in the noise. After a tense moment, the officer stepped back and made a call. Minutes later, the trucks shut down. The foreman threw his helmet in frustration. "We're postponing," he muttered, "until further notice." A collective breath swept through the crowd. Cheers erupted. Rosa burst into tears, laughing between sobs. Lena turned to Nicholas, disbelief in her eyes. "You did it." He shook his head, still catching his breath. "We did it." But victory came with a price. That night, the news confirmed what he already knew. His assets frozen, lawsuits multiplying, his fortune evaporating faster than it was ever built. When he returned to the diner, Lena was waiting. The lights were low. The world outside was celebrating, but inside, it was just them. "You're broke," she said softly, half smiling. He chuckled. "Feels like freedom." "You're serious?" "I have nothing left they can take," he said. "Except this." She stepped closer. "And what is this?" He met her gaze, voice barely a whisper. "The part of me they never owned." The air between them shifted. Not lust, not impulse, but something deeper, born of shared fire. She smiled sadly. "You realize this story doesn't end in luxury anymore." He touched her cheek gently. "Good. Luxury never made me feel alive." Outside, the city lights flickered like candles. Inside, two people who should never have met stood in the ruins of everything false and in the beginning of something true. Yet even as they stood together, Victor's warning echoed in Nicholas's mind. They'll come back. They always do. And as dawn approached, a single headline began to circulate online. One written by a reporter who had seen everything. "The man who defied money may have just redefined love." The next morning, the diner smelled like hope and fresh coffee. For the first time in years, Nicholas woke before the sun, not to chase numbers, but to open doors. The world outside was still buzzing about the protest. Networks calling it a modern act of moral rebellion. Economists calling it financial suicide. But inside those walls, it was quiet, warm, alive. He wore no suit now, just a rolled-up shirt and a tired smile. Rosa teased him for moving like a man twice his age. "Guess humility has weight," she said, pouring him coffee. Nicholas grinned. "It's heavier than gold." She handed him a mug. "But it shines better in the right hands." Lena arrived soon after, hair messy from sleep, eyes bright despite exhaustion. She tied her apron, looked around and exhaled, that soft sigh of someone who still couldn't believe what had survived. "They postponed demolition again," she said. "No one wants to be the face of destroying a legend." Nicholas smiled. "Then maybe legends are just truths people finally start believing." Rosa rolled her eyes affectionately. "You two talk like poets. I'm going to the bank to see if they'll finally unfreeze our account. Don't burn the place down while I'm gone." When she left, the diner felt different. Lighter, quieter, more intimate. Lena sat opposite Nicholas, resting her elbows on the counter. "You really plan to stay?" she asked. "I don't know where else to go," he said. "I spent my life owning things. Now I just want to belong somewhere." She studied him. "And you think belonging is something you can just decide?" He smiled softly. "No, I think it's something you earn, one small act at a time." They fell into silence, watching the light crawl across the counter. Outside, people were already gathering. Not reporters this time, but families, workers, neighbors bringing letters and stories. The diner had become a symbol of everything the city had forgotten. Kindness, memory, the sacredness of ordinary days. One man walked in holding a small wooden box. He placed it gently on the counter. "Anna helped me 30 years ago," he said. "This was her tip jar. I kept it all these years. I think she'd want it here again." Lena's eyes filled. She would. The man smiled, nodded at Nicholas, and left without another word. Nicholas ran his thumb over the box's smooth lid, carved with faded initials, AM. He whispered, "She started something none of us could finish alone." Lena nodded. "Then finish it your way." Later that day, Victor returned. He looked tired, but different, freer somehow. "The board's done," he said. "They're liquidating assets, trying to recover losses, but they won't touch the diner again. It's too public now. Untouchable." Nicholas raised an eyebrow. "You sound almost proud." Victor smirked. "Don't get used to it, I'm still the practical one." Then his voice softened. "You were right, Nick, about everything." Nicholas extended a hand. "No, we were both wrong once. Maybe that's why we get another chance." Victor shook it firmly. "You planning to build another empire?" Nicholas looked around the diner. The laughter, the clinking of plates, Lena humming softly by the window. I think I already have. Victor followed his gaze and smiled. Then maybe I'll invest in this one. After he left, Lena brought 2 cups of coffee and set one in front of Nicholas. So, she said, half smiling, what do we call this new empire? He thought for a moment. The Anna Foundation, he said. A network of small diners across the city, hiring people who need second chances, feeding anyone who walks in hungry, no questions asked. Her smile grew. You're serious? I've never been more serious, he said, and I want you to run it with me. She blinked. Me? You've been running this one for years, he said. You just didn't know it. You understand people better than any executive I ever hired. She looked down, overwhelmed, then met his eyes again. You don't want a business partner, Nicholas. You want someone to keep you honest. He laughed quietly. Maybe both. The light through the window fell across them like a benediction. She reached out, her hand brushing his. Then promise me something, she said. Anything. That you'll never forget who you were before all this. He squeezed her hand gently. I won't, because you remind me every day. For a long moment, neither spoke. The noise of the city faded. Only the rhythm of their breathing remained, steady and real. Then Lena whispered, you know, this started because you mocked a waitress. He smiled, eyes shining, and ended, because one taught me how to live. Outside, the crowd's voices grew. Laughter, gratitude, the hum of life returning. Inside, the 2 of them stood side by side, not as billionaire and waitress, but as equals. 2 people who had both been broken and decided to rebuild, starting with themselves. Weeks passed. The lawsuits faded. The headlines moved on. But the diner didn't. It grew. Volunteers came, donations arrived, and soon the Anna Foundation opened its 2nd branch on the other side of the river, a place that looked exactly like the original. Modest, warm, full of stories. On the wall hung a framed copy of that photograph, the boy on the curb, the woman offering bread, and a single line beneath it. Kindness is the only investment that never loses value. Every morning, Nicholas wiped that frame with his own hands. Every night, Lena locked the doors beside him, and sometimes when the city lights reflected in the window, he'd catch her watching him. Not the man he used to be, but the one who had finally learned to be still. They never called what they had love. It was quieter than that, a companionship rooted in purpose, a bond that had survived money, pride, and ruin. But every time their hands brushed across a coffee cup, the world outside disappeared for a heartbeat. And that was enough. One evening, as the sun melted into the river, Lena leaned on the counter and said softly, do you ever miss it? The towers, the noise, the power. He thought for a long moment before answering. No, he said. I thought I wanted to own the world, but now I just want to feed it. She smiled, eyes glistening in the golden light. Then I guess you finally won. Nicholas looked around, the photographs, the laughter, the hum of living souls. No, he said. We did. Outside, the neon sign flickered on. Harbor Diner, since 1973. Below it, someone had added a new line in fresh paint. Love still changes people. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because stories like this remind us that no matter how cold the world becomes, kindness will always rebuild what money destroys.